I'll play the clip in just a moment. Ben Shapiro ran to CNN, of all places, in a pathetic attempt to try to leverage even more power in hopes of getting Tucker Carlson canceled after the kosher conservative meltdown continues, now entering week number 3 because Tucker Carlson interviewed right-wing streamer Nick Fuentes 2 weeks ago on his podcast and hasn't been dropped, hasn't been canceled from the Turning Point USA big conference next month, America Fest, as the keynote speaker.
The real issue here is I think that Tucker Carlson's morphing from, I would say, a very edgy right-wing political figure on Fox News, but certainly within the mainstream, into a conspiracist, a person who ideologically launders anti-Semitism, who ideologically launders all sorts of anti-Americanism on his show, and then airs it for the public to hear with interviews like the ones he did with Nick Fuentes, which was essentially a massage of Nick Fuentes. You know, I think that took a lot of people by surprise.
This very tiny yet dedicated and highly organized and well-funded group have been kvetching about this for the last 2 weeks, trying to make it into a big controversy, trying to get people to actually care. But in reality, only a very small group of conservatives, of Republicans, of Americans care what these clowns say. Stay tuned because there's plenty more to come in this video, but real quick, subscribe to my channel for new here because you're not going to find independent and, well, politically incorrect analysis like this anywhere else. And the Trump Claus knit sweater is back in my online store at markdice.com. That's not a printed design like the usual t-shirts. That's actually woven into the yarn of the fabric. But this is a special custom order, so you got to get your orders in now, and then I'll be having them woven up and then shipped out definitely before Christmas. But time will run out for those, so get your orders in now at markdice.com or click the link in the description below and check them out. Little Ben is doing the whole podcast circuit now, whining to anyone who will listen about Tucker Carlson. Here he is on Megyn Kelly's show.
Tucker, your guest last night, decided to have him on last week and to completely gloss him, in my opinion. And you can make up your own opinion as to what you think Tucker was doing during that interview, but I know what it looks like when Tucker Carlson decides to be an aggressive interviewer, when he decides to ask difficult questions of people. Tucker is eminently capable of doing that. He did it to Ted Cruz quite thoroughly. But he decided for any number of reasons, and I try not to attribute motivations to people, that he was going to treat Fuentes with kid gloves, that he was going to not ask him about any of the things that I've just mentioned, literally any of them, and to essentially normalize Fuentes, act as a sort of gateway drug or as what I've called Tucker, as an ideological launderer of bad ideas over the last couple of years. And this is not coming from a place of animus for Tucker on a personal level.
This is coming from a place of you being a Jewish supremacist and upset that Tucker Carlson doesn't put Jews on a pedestal or Israel on a pedestal anymore since he left the mainstream media and started doing his own research. Here he is, sounding like a broken record on the Trigonometry podcast.
I've been doing this for a very long time. I started writing syndicated column when I was 17 years old. I don't know that there's anybody who's been following me for any period of time who's ever said, whatever happened to the views of that Ben Shapiro? He's really morphed. He's really changed. Well, what happened? Like, I don't get that question ever, but I don't think you could say the same about Tucker. I mean, I think that's one of the most common questions about Tucker. It's like, what changed? What happened? And so I think, that's a relevant question. And pretending that people haven't morphed or that shouldn't have any impact on the public discourse, of course it does. The things that, that's literally our job, is to talk about these issues. And if
he changed because he doesn't work for Fox News anymore, Ben, and he had plenty of time on his hands to start researching some rather taboo topics. And the Overton window, which had severely restricted, discouraged, prevented, banned, censored people from talking about those topics, has also changed over the last several years because of Israel's actions in Gaza. May I remind you that your former protege and the Daily Wire's hopeful new it girl, Brett Cooper, who quit the Daily Wire last year to go independent on her own, now sounds exactly like Tucker Carlson. Here she is last week talking about Randy Fine and the other Jewish supremacists in Congress and in the media.
Who he is. He's a representative from Florida. He's the same guy who bragged about not washing his hands after he had a handshake with Netanyahu. He's repeatedly introduced bills to criminalize anti-Semitism, infringing upon free speech. I mean, he obviously, I'm sorry to say, but he obviously cares more about Israel than he does, principles like free speech. So, buddy, like, my advice to you, Randy Fine, is just move to Israel at this point. Like, considering you had to go through anger management classes a few years ago, I genuinely think you would probably be happier if you just moved to Israel. And that's not a dig at him. That's just a fact. It's a nudge of encouragement. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to be healthy. I think you would be happier if you just moved to Israel. You could be over there singing songs with Mike Huckabee.
So again, little Ben, the reason why Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his podcast is because he's an extremely popular streamer amongst Generation Z young men, despite being canceled, banned, censored from all the big tech platforms, which is why Rolling Stone just published this article, Why Do So Many Young Men Like Nick Fuentes? Well, I'll tell you why, and obviously I don't agree with everything that he says or does, some of his tactics, but the reason why he is so popular amongst the youth today is because not only is he extremely talented and very well spoken, but he's severely politically incorrect. He doesn't care about using the little N-word or saying things that are deemed supposedly racist or anti-Semitic, because Generation Z, the young men, the ones who haven't been infected by wokeism, the liberal mind virus, are sick and tired of the politically correct bullcrap that has been shoved down their throats for their entire lives. So when they see someone like Nick Fuentes, who is speaking completely freely, not caring about who he is offending, they identify with that. They see that as someone who is saying the things that they can't say online. They could say those things with their friends, provided that one of them is not going to secretly record them and try to get them canceled. That is one of the reasons. And because he's pro-white and he has been pushing the Overton window, talking about Jewish involvement, Jewish power in American politics, which, I mean, for up until about a year ago, 2 years ago, was basically completely prevented from being heard in conservative media. It's fascinating to see why somebody on the left and on the right just can't understand how he's been able to get such a large and dedicated audience by being so politically incorrect. This from the Washington Post. Nick Fuentes, a person who once called Adolf Hitler, quote, awesome, has more than 1 million followers on Elon Musk's X. So they're trying to get him banned from that platform, obviously. Now he finds himself a central figure in an online battle over the future of the American conservative movement. Here's his response to people obsessing about such comments.
And on the same night that Republicans are getting curb stomped because the economy sucks.
He's talking about the election of Mamdani in New York and other Democrats taking over governorships in kind of purple states.
What is Ted Cruz talking about? No, guys, you don't get it. Nick Fuentes really is a Nazi because he said Hitler's cool. Shut up. Nobody cares. Hitler is dead. The Nazis don't exist. When people say you're a Hitler-Stalin apologist, that means as much as if you said I'm a Oliver Cromwell apologist. Who f***ing cares? They're dead. It's history. It's 100 years ago. You would think the way these politicians talk that the NSDAP is on the ballot, that it's the 30s. It's not. People are edgelords now. It's called the internet, Grandpa. It's called the internet, old man. People make jokes. They make jokes because you react this way. We don't care. Anyway.
And while he is resonating largely with Gen Z's young men, the Israel fatigue phenomena has spread across all generations. Here is a baby boomer saying exactly what we think.
If you think America is a bad place, just remember, here we're still allowed to criticize our own government, just not Israel's.
The people who are trying to cancel Tucker Carlson, like Little Ben and his little clique of neocons, and who are trying to get any conservative or any American who isn't interested in hearing or dealing with Israel's problems, an anti-Semite, are like people in quicksand. The more they keep moving, the more they keep speaking, the worse it gets for them, but they just don't understand that. But on the other hand, I'm starting to wonder if maybe they do know. Maybe it's part of their strategy in order to constantly get themselves portrayed as the perpetual victim. Here is ADL President Jonathan Greenblatt talking about how Few people care about his favorite country and how it is just absolutely shocking to him.
ADL's Global 100 survey of anti-Semitic attitudes around the world found a 46% shift. 46% of the adult population, 2.2 billion people, harbor elevated levels of anti-Semitism. That's nearly double the rate that we saw a decade ago. For the first time since we started tracking these attitudes in the 1960s, the younger generation is more likely to hold elevated anti-Jewish views than their parents or grandparents.
Gee, I wonder why. It certainly couldn't be because of representatives of the Jewish community like you who say ridiculous things like this.
And the last point I would say, caravan, open borders. These are literally white supremacist phrases that have worked their way through the system and somehow landed in the talking points coming out of the West Wing.
Or people like Ben Shapiro, who embody many of the negative stereotypes that Jewish people have been hoping to distance themselves from.
America needs a robust conservative organization based on principle and ideas, not personal loyalty to bad actors like Tucker Carlson.
Ben was very effective at all, but this is what the lobby's dispatching.
Yeah. He and Mark Levin, some of those tapes of Levin.
Oh, boy, we can play them for you if you want. They're nauseating.
But it again, it shows you the level of desperation here. And by the way, some people have sent me some tweets involving Ben Shapiro. And when you look at the comments, virtually all the comments are against him. So he's not effective.
I don't think that he and Mark Levin, and I know them both from my years at Fox, are very effective PR people, even for the Zionist cause. And the split in MAGA, particularly among the young people, these guys are losing that battle.
Yeah,
Israel is hemorrhaging support in the United States, in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago and in Dallas.
And because of Mark Levin's ongoing meltdowns over Tucker Carlson, now entering week number 3, Tucker privately texted him and asked him if he wanted to come and debate him at the big Turning Point conference next month. And this was Mark Levin's response.
I got a very strange text this morning from Tucker Carlson. 10:16 a.m. I'll read it to you for verbatim. Good morning, he writes to me. The leadership at Turning Point has asked me to debate you at their event in Scottsdale in December. I'm happy to do it, and I hope you'll agree as well. Beyond the personal insults, which I'll try to keep to a minimum, there are real and important ideological differences between us, and I think the country would benefit from an extended conversation about them. So again, I hope you'll accept. Let me know. Thanks. The guy is desperate. He's taken a hit on his podcast. He's fighting like hell for his career. He's fighting like hell for his reputation. People are awakening to what scum he actually is.
Everything that he says is the exact opposite. Obviously, just like the left. Projection 100%. Tucker Carlson's the coward for inviting him on to debate at Turning Point's biggest conference of the year.
And he thinks I'm going to platform him?
Turning Point is platforming him. He's asking you, he's inviting you to share that platform. He's inviting you to come and humiliate him with all of your brilliance, great one.
He thinks I'm going to help him kick up his podcast ratings?
He didn't invite you on the podcast. He invited you to the Turning Point event.
What would Charlie say? What would Rush say?
We know what Charlie would say because we have the leaked and confirmed text messages, which reveal that despite Jewish donors dropping millions of dollars a year in donations because Turning Point wouldn't cancel Tucker, he still wouldn't do it, and said that they fit all the stereotypes of a certain group of people. And that they're causing him to abandon the pro-Israel cause. Here's Dan Crenshaw on CBS's Face the Nation trying to pile on and get Tucker canceled while claiming the exact opposite, that he opposes cancel culture.
And for Tucker to have him on, Senator Cruz is exactly right. And this idea that we have to, that it's cancel culture if we keep Tucker out of our circles from now on is just nonsense. I literally wrote a book on cancel culture, so I've thought deeply about this. Cancel culture means you're canceling someone for what is basically a mainstream belief, or maybe a small honest mistake they made. That would be maybe considered cancel culture. It's not cancel culture when you say, look, I want to disassociate myself from you because your beliefs are crazy and you're psychopathic.
Listen, you don't have to go on Tucker's podcast if you don't want to. You don't have to go and have a burger or a beer with him. But obviously, this very small but highly motivated and highly funded group that's been kvetching about Tucker for the last 2 weeks wants him canceled from the Turning Point event. In fact, now many of them are calling on President Trump to weigh in on the situation.
Would you like to see in this moment President Trump weigh in on Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes?
I think it would be a positive development.
And we also know how Charlie Kirk feels about Tucker Carlson because he made reference to it several times in the months leading up to his assassination.
So, let me ask a question. If we were to remove, if people said what Tucker said is anti-Semitic, I don't hold that view. But it's a lot of people on Twitter are calling us out and whatever. That's not going to happen. But if we were to cancel Tucker, would anti-Semitism increase or decrease?
I think increase, because that means any supporter of Tucker Carlson's statement therefore makes them anti-Semites.
And again, maybe they do want more anti-Semitism in hopes of leveraging that to gain more sympathy and power, as this former Israeli politician once admitted.
Often when there is dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are anti-Semitic. And the organization is strong and has a lot of money, and the ties between Israel and the American Jewish establishment are very strong, and they are strong in this country. As you know, they have power, which it's okay. They are talented people, and they have power, money, and media, and other things. And their attitude is Israel, my country, right or wrong, the identification. And they are not ready to hear criticism.
And certainly don't buy this book, The Holocaust Industry, Reflections on the Exploitation of Jewish Suffering by Norman Finkelstein, who he himself is a Jew whose family was in the Holocaust. A book that surprisingly hasn't been banned from Amazon. And certainly don't order your Trump Claus knit sweaters from my online store at markdice.com, which are different, like I said, than the usual printed t-shirts and printed sweatshirts. These are knit. The design is woven into the knit sweater itself. These are special custom order. So get your orders in now, and then they'll be woven up and then shipped out so you can get them in time for Christmas to trigger your favorite family members, in-laws, etc., or to give as a gift. So head on over to markdice.com or click the link in the description below and check them out.